Listen carefully. There is a woman, no group chats, no late night calls, no one checking, "Did you get home safe?" And the world looks at her and whispers something must be wrong with her. But what if they are completely wrong? What if her silence is not loneliness, but power? Let me tell you something most people will never understand. A woman with no friends has either lost herself completely or found herself entirely. And today, you're about to understand why. The first key point is she has outgrown shallow connections, and that means she no longer trades her peace for conversations that leave her empty. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. One day she was laughing in a group chat, replying fast, reacting to everything, and slowly something started to feel off. The jokes felt recycled, the support felt conditional. The "how are you" never waited for a real answer. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt like no one actually saw you? That quiet realization hit her. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft whisper inside saying, "This is not it." And once you hear that whisper, you can't unhear it. At first, she tried to ignore it. She told herself she was overthinking. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe this is how friendships are supposed to feel. So she kept showing up, kept laughing at things that weren't funny, kept listening to stories she didn't care about. But something strange started happening. She felt more exhausted after being with people than when she was alone. Isn't that funny? You meet people to feel alive, but sometimes they drain the life out of you. Like a phone connected to the wrong charger, it looks plugged in, but the battery keeps dropping. Then came the small moments that changed everything. A secret she shared turned into gossip. A bad day she opened up about got brushed off with a joke. A win she celebrated met with silence. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, just small cracks. But small cracks, repeated enough times, break strong walls. She started noticing patterns. Who shows up only when they need something? Who disappears when you need them? Who claps the loudest in public, but never checks on you in private? Patterns don't lie. People reveal themselves quietly, consistently. And here's the part no one talks about. Letting go felt weird. Not painful at first, just awkward. Like leaving a party early without saying goodbye, like walking out of a movie halfway through because you finally admit it's boring. She didn't announce it. No speech. Suddenly, the same people who never noticed her presence started noticing her absence. Isn't that interesting? When you give less, people question more. There were moments she doubted herself. Of course she did. Am I being too harsh? Am I expecting too much? What if I end up alone? These thoughts came like uninvited guests. But then she asked herself something powerful. What am I really losing here? And the answer was almost funny. Endless scrolling conversations, fake laughter, plans that never happen, energy that never returns. That's not loss, that's release. That's like cleaning your room and realizing you didn't need half the stuff you were holding on to. She began to enjoy things she once avoided. Sitting alone at a cafe without checking her phone every 5 seconds. Walking without headphones, just listening to her own thoughts. Eating a meal slowly, actually tasting it instead of talking over it. And here's the surprising part, she started laughing more. Not louder, but real laughter. The kind that comes from peace, not performance. Who knew solitude could feel this light, this free? Now when she looks at shallow connections, she doesn't feel anger. She feels clarity. She understands that not everyone is meant to go deep. Some people are just surface level, like background music in a store, nice to hear, but you wouldn't build your life around it. And she's okay with that. She doesn't hate them, she just doesn't stay there anymore. Because once you taste depth, real conversations, real presence, real understanding, you can't go back to pretending. You simply can't. The second key point is she protects her energy ruthlessly. And that means she treats her peace like something valuable, not something to be handed out for free. At some point, she realized something most people learn too late. Not everything that drains you is loud. Some things are quiet. A simple conversation that feels off. A person who smiles but leaves you feeling heavy. Ever met someone and after 10 minutes you feel like you need a nap and maybe a snack too? That's not hunger, that's emotional exhaustion. She started noticing these small shifts inside her, noticing how her mood changed depending on who she was around, and once she saw it clearly, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She used to think being kind meant being available all the time, replying instantly, listening endlessly, saying yes even when her mind was screaming no. But kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Imagine leaving your front door open all day. Anyone can walk in, some will bring gifts, others will walk out with your peace. And the funny part, you'll stand there smiling, saying, "It's okay." It's not okay. She finally understood that protecting her energy is not selfish, it's necessary. There was this one moment, small, almost forgettable, but it changed everything. Someone called her just to complain again. Same story, same negativity, no intention to change. She listened like always, nodded, agreed, gave advice like always. And after the call ended, she just sat there, staring at nothing, completely drained. And then she asked herself something simple but powerful. Why do I feel worse after helping? That question stayed, it echoed, and slowly it turned into a boundary. Now, she doesn't pick up every call, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares about herself too. She doesn't reply to every message instantly. The world doesn't end, trust me. Sometimes she sees a message and thinks, this can wait. And guess what? It waits, and life goes on. It's funny how we think everything is urgent until we stop treating it that way. Not everything deserves immediate access to you. Not everything deserves your attention. She became very selective with what she allows into her space. Conversations, environments, even thoughts. Yes, even thoughts. Because sometimes the biggest energy drain isn't people, it's the stories we keep repeating in our own mind. Overthinking, replaying, imagining worst case scenarios. It's like watching the same boring movie again and again, hoping for a different ending. She started interrupting those turns, gently but firmly. Not today. And slowly her mind became quieter, lighter. And here's where it gets interesting. People noticed the change. Of course they did. The same people who were used to unlimited access suddenly felt a limit. And some didn't like it. You've changed. Yes, she did. That's the whole point. Growth looks like distance to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries, but she didn't argue, didn't explain too much, because not everyone deserves a full explanation. Sometimes your silence is the clearest message. Now she moves differently. She listens to how she feels, not just what others expect. Then sit there. If something feels off, she steps back. If something feels right, she leans in. Simple, clean, honest. She laughs more freely, rests more deeply, and chooses more carefully. And the beautiful part, her energy is no longer scattered. It's focused, strong, alive, like a calm river that knows exactly where it's going. Not rushing, not forced, just flowing with purpose. The third key point is she became her own support system. And that means she stopped outsourcing her strength and started building it within. There was a time when she reached for her phone before she reached for herself. Something went wrong, call someone. Feeling low, text someone. Needed reassurance. Wait for someone else to say the right words. It felt normal. It felt human. But slowly something uncomfortable started to show. What happens when no one picks up? What happens when the message is seen but not replied to? That silence, it hit differently. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, she had been leaning on people who were not built to hold her weight. At first, she didn't like it. Not at all. Sitting alone with your own thoughts can feel like being locked in a room with a stranger. Awkward, restless, a little scary. She would try to distract herself, scrolling, watching, anything to avoid that inner noise. But the more she ran, the louder it got. Until one day she stopped running. She sat there. No phone, no music. Just her and her thoughts. And instead of breaking, something unexpected happened. She started understanding herself. She began asking herself questions no one else had asked her. Why did that hurt so much? What am I really afraid of? What do I actually need right now? And the answers didn't come instantly. Sometimes they came slowly, like a shy child stepping forward. Sometimes they came with tears, sometimes with laughter, because she realized she was worrying about things that didn't even matter. Ever argued in your head with someone and won? Yeah, she had those moments too. And she laughed. Because for the first time, she was not avoiding herself. She was meeting herself. Little by little, she started becoming the person she once searched for in others. When she felt low, she didn't panic anymore. She paused, took a breath, said to herself, okay, we'll figure this out. Notice that word, we. She was no longer alone because she had herself. When something went wrong, she didn't immediately look outside. She looked inward first. What can I do? What can I learn? What can I fix? And that shift, that quiet shift, changed everything. There were still hard days. Of course, there were days when she wished someone would just show up and say, I've got you. Days when she felt tired of being strong. And in those moments, she didn't pretend to be okay. She allowed herself to feel it, sought with it. Maybe cried a little, maybe ate something sweet and said, this is part of the process. And strangely, those moments didn't break her, they built her. Because every time she survived her own storm, she trusted herself a little more. She also stopped expecting people to read her mind. That was a big one. Before, she would feel hurt when people didn't understand her, didn't support her the way she wanted. But then she realized something simple. How can they, if she doesn't even fully understand herself yet? So instead of waiting for perfect support, she started giving herself clarity. She wrote things down, talked to herself like a friend. Yes, actual conversations. And if someone walked in, it might look a little funny. But honestly, it worked better than half the advice she used to get. And now, she carries this quiet confidence. Not loud, not showy, just steady. Like someone who knows that no matter what happens, she won't collapse. Because she has built something strong inside. She doesn't chase people to feel complete. She doesn't beg for attention to feel seen. She walks into her life knowing if everything falls apart, she won't. Because she has practiced being there for herself again and again until it became natural. The fourth key point is She is no longer afraid of being alone, and that means silence is no longer her enemy, it has become her space to breathe. There was a time when being alone felt heavy. Not peaceful, heavy. Like sitting in a quiet room where every thought echoes louder than it should. She would reach for anything to escape it. Music, messages, random scrolling, even pretending to be busy. Because silence had a way of exposing things she wasn't ready to face. Have you noticed that? When everything gets quiet, your mind suddenly gets loud. And for a long time, she believed that noise from the outside was better than the noise within, so she stayed around people, even when it didn't feel right, stayed in conversations that drained her, stayed in places that didn't feel like home. Not because she loved them, but because she feared the alternative. The idea of sitting alone felt like failure, like something must be wrong if no one is around. It's strange how the world teaches you that being alone means being unwanted, as if your value depends on how many people are around you, like you're some kind of human group project. But life has a quiet way of teaching lessons you can't avoid. One evening, she found herself alone. No plans, no calls, no distractions, just her. And for a moment, she felt that familiar discomfort creeping in, the urge to fill the silence, the urge to escape. But this time, she didn't run. She stayed. She sat there, looked around, and thought, okay, now what? And nothing dramatic happened. The world didn't collapse. The silence didn't consume her. It just stayed quiet. Days turned into small experiments. Sitting alone for a little longer, walking without needing company, watching a sunset without posting it anywhere. And something surprising started to happen. She began to enjoy it. Not in a loud, exciting way, but in a calm, steady way. Like finally taking off tight shoes after a long day. Relief, space, freedom. She realized that being alone wasn't empty. It was open. Open to think, to feel, to just exist without performing. And yes, there were funny moments too. Like talking to herself and suddenly realizing, wait, I actually make good points. Or laughing at her own thoughts because no one else was there to judge. Ever caught yourself giving a full speech in your head and then nodding like you agree? That's her now. And instead of feeling weird about it, she embraces it. Because she understands something powerful. When you are comfortable alone, you are never truly alone. She also noticed how her decisions changed. Before, she would choose based on what others might think. What would they say? Would they approve? Would they stay? But now, those questions faded. When you're no longer afraid of being alone, you stop tolerating things that don't feel right. You don't stay where you are not respected. You don't shrink to fit in. Because the fear that once kept you stuck is no longer there. And without that fear, you become free in a way most people never experience. Now her solitude feels different. It's not isolation, it's intention. It's choosing to be with herself, not being forced into it. She can walk into a crowded room and leave early without guilt. She can spend a whole day alone and feel full, not empty. And when people do come into her life, she meets them from a place of strength, not need. Because she knows being alone is not something to fear, it's something that taught her who she really is. The fifth key point is she has higher standards now, and that means she no longer accepts what once felt good enough because she finally understands her value. There was a time when she said yes too quickly, yes to plans she didn't enjoy, yes to people who barely respected her, yes to conversations that went nowhere, not because she loved them, but because she didn't want to seem difficult. Ever done that? Smiling, agreeing, going along, while something inside quietly says, This isn't right. Back then, her standards were shaped by fear. Fear of losing people, fear of being judged, fear of being alone. So she settled not loudly, not obviously, but in small silent ways. Then something shifted. Not in one big moment, but in a series of tiny realizations. She started noticing how she felt after certain interactions, drained, ignored, unseen. And one day, she asked herself a question that felt almost uncomfortable. If I treat people with respect, honesty, and care, why am I accepting less in return? That question didn't leave. It followed her into conversations, into choices, into quiet moments alone. And slowly, it started raising a new standard inside her. Raising standards doesn't feel powerful at first. It felt else awkward because suddenly you start saying no where you used to say yes. You pause before agreeing. You question things you once accepted without thinking. And people notice, of course they do. You've changed, you're acting different. Yes, she is. Because growth is not always comfortable for the people who benefited from your silence. And sometimes the hardest part is not changing yourself, it's watching others react to that change. She became more observant, not suspicious, just aware. She started paying attention to actions, not just words. Anyone can say, I care about you. But do they show up? Do they listen? Do they respect your time? It's like ordering food from a place that always looks good in pictures, but tastes disappointing every time. At some point, you stop blaming your expectations and you stop ordering from there. Simple. Her life became like that. No more repeating patterns that never delivered. And yes, she lost people. Some slowly drifted away, some left suddenly. Some didn't understand her boundaries at all. But instead of chasing them, she did something different. She let them go. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just with clarity. Because she realized something powerful. Not everyone is meant to meet the version of you that knows her worth. Some people only knew the version of you that tolerated less. And when that version disappears, so do they. There were moments she questioned herself again. Am I expecting too much? Is this too high? But then she reminded herself, having standards is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about choosing people who meet you with the same honesty, the same respect, the same energy, not perfectly, but genuinely. And if that feels rare, that's okay. Rare things are valuable. Nobody calls something common precious. Now her no is calm, not defensive, not loud, just clear. She does. Nate need to explain it 10 times. She doesn't need to feel guilty for it. Because she knows every time she says no to something that doesn't feel right, she is saying yes to herself. And that changes everything. The sixth key point is she is focused on growth, not approval. And that means she no longer builds her life around being liked, she builds it around becoming better. There was a time when approval felt like oxygen, a like, a compliment, a simple, you're doing great, it could lift her entire day. And when it didn't come, everything felt a little off. She would wonder, did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? It's exhausting. Isn't it? Living your life like a performance, waiting for applause that may or may not come, like cooking a full meal and then staring at people, hoping they say it tastes good, instead of just enjoying what you made. At some point, she noticed something strange. The same people she tried to impress weren't even that impressive. Think about it. She was adjusting her voice, her choices, even her dreams for people who were still figuring out their own lives. It hit her one day, why am I taking directions from people who don't know where they're going? That thought didn't make her arrogant, it made her aware, and awareness changes everything. So she started shifting her focus, slowly, gently but firmly. Instead of asking, do they like me? She asked, am I growing? Instead of chasing validation, she chased improvement. Small things at first, reading a few pages, learning a new skill, sitting with her thoughts instead of running from them. It didn't look exciting from the outside. No big announcements, no loud progress, but inside, something powerful was building. And here's the funny part, when you stop trying to impress people, you actually become more interesting. Not because you're trying, but because you're real. She stopped forcing conversations, stopped pretending to agree just to fit in. Sometimes she would just listen quietly and smile, and people would say, you've changed. Yes, she has. She's no longer performing. She's present. Big difference. There were days it felt lonely, of course. Growth often looks like isolation. While others were out chasing attention, she was at home working on herself. While others were busy being seen, she was focused on becoming someone worth seeing. It's like planting seeds underground. No one claps for it. No one even sees it. But you know something is happening quietly, deeply. And that quiet confidence, it starts to replace the need for approval. She also stopped comparing her journey. That was a big one, because comparison is a trap that never ends. Someone will always be ahead, someone will always seem better. But she realized most people are just showing highlights, not reality. It's like watching a movie trailer and thinking that's the whole story. She stepped out of that game, focused on her own pace, her own path, some days fast, some days slow, but always forward. Now her energy feels different, focused, directed, calm. She doesn't get distracted by every opinion, every comment, every passing judgment, because she knows where she's going. And when you know where you're going, you don't stop for every voice that calls your name. You keep walking, you keep building, you keep growing even when no one is watching. The seventh key point is she is waiting for real, not settling for less, and that means she would rather sit in honest solitude than stand in fake company. There was a time when waiting felt like losing, like life was moving ahead without her. People forming bonds, sharing moments, building circles, and she was just there, watching, wondering, questioning. Am I missing out? That question can be loud. It can make you rush into things that don't feel right. Ever joined a conversation and instantly knew, I don't belong here, but still stayed just to avoid that feeling of being left out? She's been there, smiling on the outside, negotiating with her soul on the inside. But something inside her refused to settle completely. Even when she tried to fit in, something felt off, like wearing shoes that look good, but hurt every step you take. At first you ignore it, then you adjust, then you convince yourself it's fine, but deep down you know it's not fine. That discomfort became her teacher. It whispered, this is not what you're looking for, and slowly she started listening. She began to understand that real connection is not loud. It's not constant talking or endless messages. It's not about being surrounded all the time. Real connection feels easy, natural, like you don't have to edit yourself. No performance, no overthinking, just being. And once she experienced even a glimpse of that, maybe in a rare conversation, or a brief moment with someone genuine, everything else started to feel forced. Like trying to laugh at a joke you don't understand, waiting became a choice, not a punishment. That shift changed everything. Instead of chasing people, she started observing. Instead of filling her time with anyone available, she left space for the right ones. It's like keeping a seat empty at your table, not because no one showed up, but because you know the wrong person shouldn't sit there. That kind of patience is rare. And yes, sometimes it gets lonely. Of course it does. But it's a clean kind of loneliness, not the heavy kind that comes from being around the wrong people. And there were funny moments too. Times when someone tried to enter her life with big words and small actions, promises, plans, excitement, and then nothing. She used to chase clarity. Now she just watches. Because actions speak in a language that doesn't need translation. Someone disappears. She doesn't write a long paragraph anymore. She just smiles and thinks, message received. Growth looks quiet like that. Less drama, more understanding. She also let go of the idea that time is running out. That pressure, I need to find my people now. No, real things take time. You don't rush something meaningful. You don't plant a seed today and expect a tree tomorrow. And she reminded herself, it's better to walk alone in the right direction than to run with a crowd going nowhere. That thought grounded her, slowed her down, made her more intentional with who she lets in. Now she carries a quiet certainty. Not impatience, not desperation, just calm knowing. She's open but not available to everything. Warm but not easily impressed. And when someone real finally steps into her life, she won't have to question it. She won't have to force it. Because real recognizes real without confusion, without games, without noise. So maybe it was never about having more people. Maybe it was about becoming someone who no longer needs to hold on to what isn't real. There is a quiet strength in the way she lives now, not loud, not demanding attention, just steady. She no longer rushes into spaces just to avoid being alone. She no longer lowers herself just to feel included. She no longer questions her worth based on who stays or who leaves. Because somewhere along the way, she understood something simple but life-changing. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you, and that's okay. There's a different kind of peace when you stop forcing things. When you let people be who they are and you choose who you become. When you stop chasing noise and start listening to what feels true. And yes, the road can feel quiet, but quiet does not mean empty. Quiet is where clarity lives. Quiet is where strength grows. Quiet is where you finally hear your own voice without interruption. She still feels, she still hopes, she still believes in real connection. But now, she waits without losing herself. She stands without shrinking. She walks without fear of who is or isn't beside her. And that changes everything. Because when you are no longer afraid to stand alone, you don't just survive life, you move through it with a calm kind of power. The kind that doesn't need approval, doesn't need noise, only truth.